All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to Birding with Ebird and Introduction to the Prairie Creek Banding Lab. My name is Heather O'Bara, and I am the Community Outreach Coordinator with Alachua Conservation Trust. I am also joined by Tim Hardin, who will be back in a few moments. There he goes. And he is with Alachua Audubon Society. I'm going to introduce Tim in a few moments before he gets his presentation going. But I just wanted to go over a few logistics for this evening's talk. First of all, for those of you who are new to Alachua Conservation Trust, we are an accredited nonprofit land trust, and our mission is to protect the natural, scenic, historic, and recreational resources in and around North Central Florida. We protect land through acquisition, donation, and conservation easements in 16 counties, including Alachua County. Tonight's presentation is part of ACT's Keep Florida Wild virtual series. We started this series last year. We took a little bit of a break in December, and now we're back with webinars each month. If you'd like to support future environmental educational programming like tonight's talk, please consider making a donation to ACT either through our website, or you can also text Florida Wild to the number 44321. And we greatly appreciate that support. It helps us do programming like this throughout the year. And I'll put that in the chat when Tim takes over from me so that you guys have that information. I'd like to also acknowledge our partners for this evening's presentation. ACT has partnered with Tall Timbers Research Station and Land Conservancy on implementing their Cornell Lab of Ornithology Land Trust Grant. Our two land trusts, along with Conservation Florida, are also partnering with 4 Audubon chapters, including Alachua Audubon Society. The goal of this wide-ranging partnership is to document declining bird species on private and land trust-owned lands. We want to also engage with private landowners with birding and the use of eBird, as well as the public, which is why we're all here this evening, and to develop new relationships between land trusts, Audubon chapters, and private landowners. A recording of tonight's talk will also be online following this event. We are broadcasting live to YouTube as well this evening, so there are a couple of folks on YouTube. I do think that the chat is having some difficulties on YouTube, so if you're having trouble sending your questions in, I apologize for that, and hopefully it's just on my end and not on your end that I'm seeing that issue. Also, we will have a Q&A following Tim's presentation this evening. So please feel free to submit your questions throughout his talk. If you think of something and you don't want to forget it, go ahead and send that question in. You can do that with the chat, or you can use the Q&A feature that's on the bottom of your screen. When you move your mouse, you should be able to see that. And I will be responding to those questions and making sure that those are getting into our list. I do see that someone has their hand raised. We cannot acknowledge hand raises using the webinar feature with Zoom this evening, but if you have a question, feel free to send it into the chat or the Q&A box. And so I'd like to introduce our speaker this evening and turn it over to him. Tim Hardin is a Gainesville resident and Santa Fe College student majoring in wildlife ecology and aims to transfer to UF upon completion of his degree requirements at Santa Fe. Tim is also a disabled combat veteran, having served on active duty in the US Army for 12 years, with 5 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan before being honorably discharged in 2014. Tim's military awards include a Bronze Star Medal for service as a Special Operations Soldier in Afghanistan and an Army Commendation Medal Award for valor in Iraq during the initial invasion in 2003. Locally, Tim serves on the board of directors of Alachua Audubon Society, and he is a member of Veterans for Peace and Alachua County Labor Coalition. Tim's love of birds started when he was 7 years old and living in Western North Carolina. A treasured pocket Audubon field guide with a blue jay on the cover, given by his parents one Christmas, is his earliest birding memory. It wasn't until a March 2019 trip to Sweetwater Wetland that his passion for birds was truly ignited. Tim credits his partner Roxanne for encouraging him to start birding again after he moved to Gainesville from New York City, and for supporting his efforts to enjoy all the natural beauty in Alachua County and more. He can usually be found at birding hotspots around Alachua County. Tim especially enjoys spring and fall migration and loves the challenge of finding every migrant warbler he can find. And Tim, I just want to thank you for being here this evening. I also want to thank you for your service as a member of our military, and I look forward to your presentation this evening.
Thank you so much, Heather. And thank you to ACT for, and this opportunity and for inviting me to speak on this presentation. So welcome to everyone. It's so nice to see for y'all to join us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and open up this. I'm going to be speaking from this this presentation. Let me know if let me make sure I'm sharing my screen. There we go. All right. There we go. Y'all should be able to see the screen now. So welcome to Birding with Ebird, an intro to the Prairie Creek Banding Lab. And I'm gonna go ahead and get to the next slide. Just got a few photos here from, there's one from the June Challenge. That was this year, a yearly friendly competition for birding in Alachua County, as well as there on the right, a Tough to Tim outside at the Prairie Creek Banding Lab. So I'll be your tutor today. So what is birding? Birding is a passion and obsession with birds as a species that separates the birders from the bird watchers. But I don't want to get too hung up on words like that. On the top left here, you can see I saw this on Twitter the other day. A comic artist and birder named Rosemary Moscow says, this is 2 tweets in succession. So she said, "Say it with me. If you watch birds, you're a birder. The vast majority of birders I meet tell me, oh, I'm not really a birder. I don't know enough." And you know, in some places, sometimes this can be a hobby where a lot of the people in it might not feel like they're really in it, because of, you know, things like gatekeeping and condescension. It's, you know, here in Alachua County, I've never experienced things like that. It's, you know, this community has been very welcoming, and especially, you know, I'm still a fairly new birder. I've really only, I guess April will be when I really, you know, that'll be really this point where I will have kind of considered myself like a serious birder for, you know, about 2 years at that point. I started birding, you know, when I was growing up as a kid. I loved birds, but I didn't really, you know, I can't remember ever seeing a migrant warbler growing up in Western North Carolina, which, you know, they must be, there are all kinds there. So it just gives you an idea of like how you know, little experience I had growing up. I didn't really, you know, I never birded. One question that I get a lot is, you know, people ask me if I birded while I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, but unfortunately, I didn't really, it would have been a better use of my time, but I didn't really get into birding until, like I said, about 2 years ago. And to continue with Rosemary's, you know, she talks about how she's rusty on sparrows. She doesn't know, you know, crossbill subtypes. Sometimes, she says, sometimes I think a mourning dove is a kestrel. Same here. You know, in ending, she says, "I'm a birder, and so are you." So yeah, you know, like I don't get too hung up on what people, you know, call themselves, birder, bird watcher, any of that stuff. But we're all here. It's, you know, it's here, especially here in Alachua County, with such a vibrant and, you know, very generous, welcoming community of bird watchers. I've always felt welcome, and I would also exhort, you know, everyone who's a birder here to extend the same, you know, generosity and welcoming to people who are new to birding. And one thing that I really carry with me, that Adam Kent mentioned actually in a series on, you know, building better birding skills that he did for Alachua Audubon a couple months ago, was that, you know, don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, like we all make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time when it comes to identifying birds. The key is to learn from them, to get better. So it's, you know, like I said, for bird watchers, you don't, it's, you know, we all start somewhere. So yeah. And as far as, you know, birding, it's actively seeking birds visually and orally. So listening. And that'll, you know, I'll talk about that a little bit when I'm on Ebird. So and one thing I wanted to add is that also backyard birders have just as much to contribute as people who go out, slogging all around, Alachua County, going out in, Paynes Prairie, kayaking out on, different lakes. You'll see this in the next slide. So why be a birder? Birds are everywhere. That brings me to the point that I was thinking, which is like birds, since you can be a birder everywhere with birds being everywhere, everyone has something to add, reporting what they're seeing, what their observations are, what's around them. Being a birder, it's beneficial for, your mental and physical health. One thing, a lot of people who know me know that, when I talk about like my experiences, like as one of the things that has strongly drawn me to birding over the last couple of years, birding, it has had such a profound and significant benefit to alleviating the symptoms of like my PTSD, like post-traumatic stress disorder that I have, from some of those, times that I was deployed, when I was in the Army. And, one of the effects of that is that, like made me irritable, made me like impatient, just like kind of like it can, it has different effects for every, some people might not have the same effects, but anyways, it has had such a profound impact on like helping me, like, I guess, you could say heal. It's just helped me so much in dealing with PTSD. And it's really helped my patience. It's helped my mental and physical health. And a lot of y'all have, very similar experiences, like from when I talk to people who are birders and they talk about what it's done for them. It's economical, both personally and from a conservation standpoint. It doesn't have a huge, a super high cost of entry. A pair of binoculars, you could get a great pair of binoculars for under $100. There are also programs for, people who are, like, maybe of like, might not be able to afford a super nice pair. There's different ways, Alachua Audubon has programs where, more so as we move on, transition to post-COVID times. But, there are all these different programs and ways that people can have access to good binoculars, scopes, things like that. But overall, you can, in order to start birding, you can, a decent pair of binoculars doesn't cost much. So it also helps us to be patient and detail oriented. Like I said, it's really helped my patience. And being quiet, being still, looking and listening for birds. It's always good to have an opportunity for things to be quiet and to reset and just kind of like take things in. So it can be rewarding, like I said, especially for me, rewarding. Every bird is rewarding, but there are certain kinds of birds that I especially love to see. And everyone has their own experiences with what they find rewarding about birding. So it's always love listening to people talk about what it does for them, because we all share so many of those experiences and what it does for us personally. And like I mentioned earlier, the conservation standpoint, it really it helps us to understand things, from ecological perspectives, from conservation, and helping to ensure that these outdoor spaces, natural places are conserved for all of us. Being a birder introduces to new people and places. As someone who, I moved here from New York City about 3 years ago, and most of my friends and people who I've met and who I've welcomed into my life have been through birding. So I've met so many of y'all, and I continue to all the time. It's a really great as a social thing as a community building thing that we do together. And it's a pretty safe outdoor activity. During COVID, it's especially, it's expanded a lot. Birding itself, there are a lot of newcomers, people, like interest in it is increasing. And I think one of those reasons is it's because you can do it safely outside, where your risk to, exposure to, things like COVID, coronavirus are just lower. And, there are ethical things, guidelines for birding that are published by the American Birding Association if you have any questions about stuff like that. But yeah, it's easy to stay well far away from someone while you're out birding. You might not even see someone else depending on where you go. So next slide. Ebird came about because of a need, and that need is for tracking avian populations and movements. So on this chart, you can see that, with Ebird, we've learned forest birds have declined 22% since 1970, shorebirds 37% since 1974, grassland birds 53% decreased, 53% since 1970. There are a lot of trends and ways to, looking at the data that is, been enabled by Ebird. Just that need to understand things has, set the conditions for why Ebird came in. So Ebird began in 2002. It's one of the world's largest biodiversity related citizen science projects. It's international in scope. It's free and open access. Anyone can use it, and you can see what people are reporting, what's being seen, and what's being done with the data. It stores observations, photos, and recordings. And we'll talk about like Macaulay Library shortly. Where do those things go, and what can you use them for? It helps you find target birds and hotspots any time of year. And I'll talk more in depth about those applications. So on the top left, you see a black and white warbler, birds, what the songs look like a little bit on those. Whoops, there we go. All right, so next, creating an account. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this section of like how to create an account. It's, you can create an account on your mobile device after you download the Ebird app, or you can go on to the Ebird website and you can go through that process. It shows you how to create a Cornell Lab account, which can be used across a number of different things, not just Ebird, but things like Birds of the World. Cornell Lab has so many great resources for birders. Oh yeah, so on the side, you can see there's Bird Academy, Birds of the World, Ebird, the Great Backyard Bird Count, Macaulay Library, Project Feeder Watch, all these things. You'll see if you can explore those once you get to the website. This is what the page looks like. All right, so next slide, smartphone, website, or both. So the website and the smartphone app, there are some trade-offs between using one or the other. With the mobile app, one thing that I use, when you're starting a checklist, as you can see, like the second screen there with the smartphone where it says, you see a green box and it says start checklist. When you do that, in the settings, you can, it'll give you an opportunity. You can see on right above that, it says record track. You can turn that on or off using a slider. Anyways, so you can record the track, there's that option. And you can check hotspots on the go, which is, you'll be able to see as you're using the app, what the functions are below there. Yeah, so the benefits of the website, you can upload media to your checklist, and it is easier to investigate, to especially using the Explore tab and all these different tools and functions that are available on Ebird to anyone who wants to use it. And anyone, as a lot of y'all know, like I'm actually fairly obsessed with eBird. I use it extensively. Let's see. There we go. I mean, I pretty much check it every day, monitoring like what's being seen, what are different bird populations doing. Like I try to maintain a real like bird's eye view of everything that's going on, and especially in Alachua County. I tend to bird mostly here in Alachua County. I go outside of it sometimes, Cedar Key, and I went to Pinellas County the other day to, I had to go to Tampa for something, so I birded there. But mostly overall, I'm keep an eye on Alachua County. Yeah, so here's the basics of checklists. When you start a checklist, and this is from the website version of, if you go to submit a checklist on the eBird website, this is what you'll see. It'll ask you, where did you bird? Date and effort, and you can see what the red stars, like that's the mandatory information before you can actually continue to the part where you're checking the boxes or putting in the numbers of what bird species that you saw or heard. And again, it's not just what you saw, it's what, especially if you are able to identify birds by sound orally. That is a huge benefit. I bird a lot by ear, and it really opens up your ability to sense, to observe things, to be aware of all the birds that are around you. So when you hear, if I hear a bird and I am able to positively ID it, I will include it just the same as I do for any visual observation. So next. All right, but what is that little brown bird? Using Merlin Bird ID. Merlin is a separate bird app, or is a separate app for to help, from the Cornell lab that helps you identify birds. It's, well, I believe the greater than 90% accuracy is for like the photo ID, but try not to rely on it too much because, it's not perfect. It might tell you, if you take a picture of an oriole, it might tell you, that it's, you might take a picture of a Baltimore oriole and it'll tell you that it's a hooded oriole or a Bolix oriole or some other sort of oriole. Just keep in mind, especially for species that are look really similar to each other, it might not give you the right answer, but more often than not, it has the capacity to give you an idea, get you in the neighborhood, if not the bird that you're looking at, if you're not sure. And you can there are always different ways of, checking to learning how to identify birds, whether through experts, through checking out field guides. There's so many different resources, but that's not the focus of this. But to wrap up Merlin, you can identify birds using that bird ID function or by uploading a photo. It's really helpful. I use Merlin a lot. It also, you can play sounds, and so that you can know if you hear a bird and you're like, oh, what was that? You might be able to use Merlin to, if you have an idea of what it is, you can maybe listen to the sound and maybe even confirm that way. It's a process, and I do use it that way. So ensuring data quality data, again, eBird, as a citizen science thing, the whole point of it really is to, collect this information for, that can be used for so many different purposes. And we're trying to get the most accurate quality data possible, recording and reporting our observations when we go out looking at birds, whether we're bird watching at home, watching our feeders, or going out somewhere, whatever it is. It's, we're trying to be as specific as possible, with counts. If you're counting birds, try to, do your best to give, as exact as you can. Yeah, and to make sure that the birds that you're reporting are, that you're 100% sure that, you know, that's the bird that you saw. So ensuring quality data, there's a team of expert local reviewers that maintain eBird data quality and that review rarities and high counts. That just means if you saw a bunch of birds that's much higher than like their average or their expected quantity, then it'll create a flag. As you can see, like that yellow that's at the top. When you're looking at this list, you can see that there's a, you know, it's highlighted in like yellow, and you'll see that on the app. You won't be able to submit a checklist without, you know, if there are flags for if it's a rare bird or if it's a high count, it'll tell you, oh, you need to include this information. You know, this is the details that, you know, put in your details of your observation, describe why you think this is what it is. And yeah, it's not really helpful to say, you know, it is helpful to describe the habitat and like the field markings and things like that. But those things are much more useful than just saying, oh, this is definitely what this, you know, I definitely saw the bird that I reported. You know, it's not like, it's much more important than that you communicate how you arrived at that ID, how you arrived at that number for the reviewer, which in our case, for Alachua County, most of y'all know it's, you know, Rex Rowan is one of the reviewers. I believe other reviewers have access, but more often than not, it's Rex is on the reviewing these rare birds or high counts. So a lot of y'all, you know, this has happened to all of us. We report something and Rex emails you to ask, hey, you know, hey, I need more information. Can you tell me why you thought it was this and instead of that? Or, you know, sometimes a reviewer will say, oh no, that's not, this is what it actually is. So that's what you can, and the purpose of that is to make sure that the data is correct, accurate, and that it's high quality. So exploring hotspots. How am I doing on time? All right, 6:30. Exploring hotspots. This is a very useful function that I want to talk about. And to do so, I have pulled up this, and you should be able to see, yeah, there we go. Exploring hotspots. On the right, you can see it says explore regions. I'm moving my cursor around right there. When you put in something, you can see that it brings up a pull-up list. So I always put, you know, if I'm looking for Alachua County, I'll set it to that. This pulls up the Alachua County tab. Now I can see, you know, up in the top left, you can have, there's a drop-down menu where it allows you to change the location. There's also one where it allows you to change what time period it is. It would be nice if you could set it to like certain years, but the options are all years, this year, this month, and then like big days, which those are like special events. So, and I usually, I change it to display only what has been seen this year. And as you can see in the top right here, it says 183 species observed. So, and on the list below, you know, then it goes on to list all 183 birds. You can sort it in certain ways. Right now it's sorted by when it was last seen. I can change it right now to see when something was first seen. So here you can see that the first time purple martin was seen in Alachua County was January 24th by Debbie Siegel out on Orange Lake. So it's really useful for a number of different reasons. You can, it even shows you like stuff that is, you know, not just bird species, but like, you know, even maybe what it was, you know, close to what it was. So like on this one, this person reported that they saw a bird species, but they weren't exactly sure what kind it was. And that's very useful for, you know, when you're reporting something, you know, you have an idea of like what kind of bird it is, like this right here, a woodpecker species. Say you saw something, you know it's a woodpecker, but you don't know exactly what kind, you can just put woodpecker SP. It's a, and that's an option you'll see in the that you can put into the eBird, the search box when you're actually submitting your observations, and it'll let you select that option. Anyways, moving on, that's how you explore. Again, like I said, this is Alachua County. Up here at the top right, where it says 176 hotspots, you can click on that, and it will bring up like you can look at the hotspots activity, and you can see at the top, number 1 is Sweetwater Wetlands. That location has had 123 species this year alone. And at the very top right, it says right here, map. If you click on that, that's when it gives you the option to explore hotspots, and you can play with the options, like there's so much you can do with it. I could spend so much longer talking about it, but it's a great thing. I use this so much, especially when I'm like when I have a certain target in mind, and then I'll, go and see what is being seen at these different hotspots. Like when I'm scouting out something, it helps me understand what I can expect at certain locations. Exploring regions, that's basically what I just went through. Yeah. Hotspots, regions. Ooh, there we go. All right, so on the left here, you can see there are a lot of different options when you're looking at that Explore Regions tab. This one is right now set for Pima County, Arizona. On the left, you can see all these different options for, you can open up the rare bird alert page for that specific region or county. You can make a printable checklist for all the birds that have been seen in the county for whatever time period. You can see target species, your life list, your My eBird, and we'll get to all that. But the key right here is that when you're navigating through this, keep an eye on the left-hand tab is where you'll see most of the functionality that you may be looking for. And here's what it actually looks like on mine. So you can see if I click on the rare bird alert, it'll take me to the rare bird alert for Alachua County. You can also see again, that printable checklist, and it brings up, since I had it set for the current year, it brings up a checklist of all the birds that have been seen in the county this year. That's, I've used that function out. I've used that tool a lot. It helps you keep track of things. If some people prefer to have like printed out things, then it's very useful. You can see, the My eBird tab. It shows you like what all the things that you've, all the data that you've entered in for, certain periods of time. This is what it looks like on the My eBird tab. And again, target species, you can change it to, the default here is to show what birds I need for my life list. So moving on, let me start that again. Species maps, that is a very useful tool as well. And that, if you put in, if you click on that on your eBird page, you'll be able to see, different types of, you'll be able to see like where all the data, I'll actually, you'll be able to see where people have reported all kinds of different birds. So I'll bring that up. And again, species maps, we can just use an example, ovenbird. So ovenbird, where have ovenbirds been reported? The default is year-round for all years. As you can see to the right of the search box, I can tighten that up just to say the current year. And and then I can change the location to Alachua County, Florida. So then this will show me where all the ovenbirds have been reported in Alachua County. And you can click on each thing and it'll give you the ability to open things up. But yeah, it's extremely useful. Moving on, targets and alerts. I talked a little bit about that. The targets provide species needed for a particular list. This is much more when it's very useful for when you're specifically looking for something. When you have a target in mind, when you're trying to make alerts for different areas. And as you can see in the right, you can change, the two options are daily, you can have updates pushed to you through your email or whatever it is that you select. You can have it, sent daily or hourly. Say if someone is seeing a Western tanager, every time someone reports that bird, I get an update for, whatever hourly I have it set for. And so I always know, oh, someone saw a Western tanager, and it sends that right to my email. So then I know. And it makes birding more addicting. That's very true. Species maps, we talked a little bit about. So Macaulay Library, the Macaulay Library is the name for the repository for where all the photos and the audio that you submit on your eBird list, that's where they're stored. It's the online data, media library for all the user uploaded stuff. And it's a scientific archive for research, education, and conservation. And it's more than just birds. So, like I said, it stores the photos and audio, and it makes it searchable. And that is very useful for me. I mean, for anyone trying to find out, say, if you want to know what sound a whippoorwill makes in January in Alachua County, you can see all of the audio. If you go on, look up on the Macaulay Library, you can change all these different search filters to where it shows you only time specific or species specific, or even the search filters. You can say, oh, I only want search results that are male birds or female birds that have been user uploaded. So extremely useful. eBird and Science. eBird collects complete checklist data. It's year-round information on all these species. And the species distribution models give you a great idea of how birds move around, what their changes, what their life cycles are, what their migration patterns are, things like that. Here's an example for wood thrush. There you go. Yeah, and here you can see that when you're opening up a one of these maps, when in the species search function, you're able to see that when on January 4th whatever on January 4th of the year, this is like a heat map, the abundance of wood thrushes. So they're mostly in the Yucatan Peninsula, especially right there, more so on the peninsula, even south of it. And these are some examples of what eBird data, how it informs conservation. And it's helped discover new nesting sites of tricolored blackbirds. I mean, there are just a bazillion examples. These are only a few. It's helped for getting drones banned from Florida state parks. It's helped in all these different things. Even here in Alachua County, it's used for doing breeding or for surveys of certain conservation sites. One partnership between Alachua Audubon and Alachua Conservation Trust was we went around to a bunch of different ACT conservation areas. A lot of those lands that ACT is conserving, and we went through and looked and identified what all the birds were that we could see, and uploaded that data to Ebird. And so, you know, that helps us understand, you know, the significant, you know, why those are significant, especially in a place. One example, I helped do a survey out at Fox Pen Preserve, and we found out, oh, you know, there's bobwhites there, and those, you know, those are birds that are, you know, declining for a lot of reasons, especially, you know, development and habitat loss. But, you know, if you go in there and look up on Ebird and look up northern bobwhites, you can see that they were seen out in, you know, Fox Pen Preserve, which is one of ACT's newly opened areas, out in the very eastern part of the county. Yeah. So land trust grant, connecting people to birds. Like Heather said, the 3 land trusts and 4 Audubon chapters were partnering together for, you know, they're doing easement monitoring visits. And these are also useful for field trips to the public. You know, especially more so, Alachua Audubon will hopefully, you know, we don't have any, you know, because of the pandemic, we don't have any field trips scheduled, but, you know, ideally we could start that, you know, who knows when we'll be able to start that again, whenever the pandemic is under control. But yeah, this slide talks about a lot of the resources that you can check out that will help you, you know, as you're looking for more information. Definitely, Alachua Audubon has so much information. If anyone ever has any questions on how to navigate those, you know, any of these websites, I'm always, you know, always there. But, you know, you can spend so much time on, you know, checking out Alachua Audubon and all these other websites, and they're just so packed full of information and resources. And, you know, it really is great. When I was, you know, I still consider myself a fairly new birder, and I, you know, I make mistakes in identifying birds, you know, even, you know, in the last week or two, several times. But especially when I was like a new birder and I was really, learning how to learning what all the hot spots were, where I could find certain birds, you know, like all those resources were just so useful. And I definitely encourage you to check those out. So let me open that again. And I can share this presentation with y'all if you want, like any of the links to these things, to any of these resources. All right, so right now it's 6:50. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Prairie Creek Banding Lab. The Prairie Creek Banding Lab, it's a collaborative partnership between the Alachua Conservation Trust and Alachua Audubon Society at Prairie Creek Preserve. So the purpose of the Bird Banding Lab is to help educate and train students and other participants on the scientific methods of capturing, banding, and tracking birds. And we also like collect a lot of, you know, data and information. All the birds that we capture teach us something and help us understand these the birds and the environments, the land here. It really, I mean, I'm sure it's the genesis of this idea, you know, happened. It started up a little bit sooner, but especially the main dates were, you know, in 2019 and 2020. Alachua Audubon Society board members, Jonathan Verreau and Dr. Katie Sieving, who teaches at UF. They established a bird banding lab at Alachua Conservation Trust Prairie Creek Lodge property, which is, you know, out there towards, it's more towards the western part, or sorry, the eastern part of the county. Yeah, it's basically east of the eastern edge of Paynes Prairie. So Prairie Creek Banding Lab, it's given us a lot of opportunities to really to teach students. Alachua Audubon's interns volunteer there a lot, and it helps get them experience, and it really teaches them like how to all these methods and things for how to when it comes to studying birds, to banding. So it's really a great way to give a lot of practical experience and instruction. So the health of the birds is really maintained. It's completely safe. We haven't it's usually a very quick process of once a bird is once a bird flies into the net. We typically do this on Saturdays, and it's we started on the recent this recent season. We started in the fall back in October, and it goes, I believe, until April. We stop during the breeding season, and that's about the time that it really is starting to heat up, etc. It's the environment and the weather is pretty permissive. We don't have to worry about birds being overheated, exhausted, things like that. But everything is done in a way that really ensures that the birds are protected, taken care of, safe. They're not at risk of being attacked by predators. They're not exposed to the elements, and really it's safe. When the birds fly into the nets, we go out and disentangle them, put them in a bag that we bring back. We do measurements. We record things like how long their wing is, how much fat deposits they have on like what their fat deposits are on their belly, which gives us an idea of like what their health is, which is especially useful for migrant birds that come through. Back in the fall when we started, it was fall migration was going on, so we were capturing things like Swainson's thrushes, veeries, different kinds of birds that don't live here. They just come through here, but they ended up in our nets. We banded them, and we learned, we get an idea of like what their health is by looking at things like what their fat deposits are, what their like making notes of like the state of their plumage. Like we try to determine a lot of birds. You can determine what their age and sex are. So it's very useful for us when we're trying to understand what birds are here, what birds are migrating through. One thing, and I'll open up that presentation again. One thing I want to talk about was site fidelity. So one example of this that especially have in mind was a bird that we captured this fall that was an ovenbird. And this ovenbird was significant because it already, when we captured it in the net, we saw that it already had a band on it. And I believe I want to say it was the first ovenbird of the year. So we knew when we captured it, that we knew that, that it wasn't a bird that we had just banded. So when we went and looked up the banding, when we captured it and looked at the band numbers, we could see that it was a ovenbird that we had banded last season, last fall. and it was, ovenbirds spend the winter here. They're warblers. I'll bring up anyways, so when we captured this ovenbird, it was very clear that this bird had been banded right at the same, at our banding station, and that it had returned to the exact same place. So site fidelity, that describes the way that this ovenbird, returned to the exact same place. It migrated last year, and then it went north to its breeding area. And when it came back, it was cool. I'll actually bring this up. This is an ovenbird. It's a ground-dwelling warbler. And you can see here that here in Florida, if you look right where I'm circling my cursor, like we're really in their, like the northern limit of their winter habitat, which is like their non-breeding range. And in the spring, they fly north to go to their this breeding area, which like the southern limit is basically northern Georgia, Alabama, a little bit, Mississippi, South Carolina. But yeah, it's a really good. This shows you like how far, perhaps we don't know like where this bird went to breed, how far north it went, but we do know that it left, it survived migration, and it came back to the same place where it was banded by us last year. And that's really cool. That shows us, these birds are coming back. And one right here, I have, this is from a issue of Alachua Audubon's newsletter, The Crane, from January and February last year. And you can see a few, let me make sure I have that. Let's see. There we go. I don't think it actually, there we go. So now you should be able to see some of the photos that were taken at the banding lab. And again, things that it shows. The fundamental goal of the bird banding lab is to record the age, sex, wing length, fat deposits, and body mass. The research has many additional uses, including avian behavior and migration, longevity and life cycles, population monitoring, and habitat use. And like I said, things like weight and plumage changes, disease and environmental toxins, and the bird banding ultimately helps us understand how to conserve and manage the land in which these species live and breed. We've caught so many cool different kinds of birds, from brown thrashers, mockingbirds, catbirds, cardinals, eastern phoebes. We caught a northern bob white. Actually, two northern bob whites flew into the net one day, and we lack the permits since there are special permits that are associated with this, and it's very very tightly managed and controlled. What is it's always like overseen by experts, and for us that's Jonathan Breaux and Dr. Katie Sieving. But they have the permits for banding songbirds, but we don't have permits for banding. Bob whites are not songbirds, so we weren't able to band them. But anyways, we've captured things like indigo buntings, this fall, all kinds of different warblers, prairie warblers, palm warblers, yellow-rumped warblers, so many different kinds of birds, titmice, and again, like the thrushes that I mentioned. We've banded hundreds of birds, and it's great. We've learned so much from that. So yeah, that pretty much, let me switch back to my presentation and wrap that up. And I believe that is, let's see. There we go. Yeah, that Oh, and I included a link in this to Jonathan Verreau. He talks about, like, if you ever wonder, like, what is a day like out at the Banding Lab, you can check out ACT's their spring 2020 newsletter. Jonathan has a piece in there that talks about, what is it like, and that's really neat. He did a great job. And the link for that is on, it's on ACT's website. It's also there. And you can, if you have any questions about what it actually is like, check that out. Otherwise, I believe, yeah, that brings me to the end of the presentation part. So, unless there's anything further, Heather, do you want to get started with the Q&A part?
Yeah, you ended right at 7 o'clock. That's absolutely perfect. Thank you, Tim. We've got some great questions coming in, and please continue to send them in. If you're watching on YouTube, the YouTube chat doesn't look like it's working this evening, so I do apologize for that. I don't think you'll be able to submit your questions, but we do have some great questions this evening via Zoom, and maybe that was one of yours. So we're going to get started with those questions. The first question is one I actually jotted down because I found the answer out to this recently, and I think maybe people might be interested in it. With eBird, when you're out there birding with other folks and you just have one checklist going, is there a way to share that with your group when you're done? Or is it just on your checklist and you can't share that with anyone?
If an eBird checklist has been shared with you, or if you've created an eBird checklist, then you absolutely can share that checklist from you have to do it from the website. You can't do it, if a checklist has already been submitted, it's at that point you can't add someone if you're using the mobile app. But like I said, and I can, I'll bring up, let's see. Like I'll bring up one of my checklists and show like how, let's see, I'm just going to bring up a checklist that was actually shared with me just to show that, like, oh yeah, Lake Santa Fe. So this checklist, yeah, I believe Debbie Siegel did this checklist, and this was a checklist from out on Lake Santa Fe, and it was shared with me. Like right now, I can share it with anyone. Just going to the y'all can see y'all should be able to see my screen. Yeah, so still doing screen share. Right here where it says share, it brings up, and if you've already added people, you can just scroll through. It generates a list of contacts. Like once you add someone to once you share a checklist, they are added to your contacts. Yeah, so you can easily add. As a matter of fact, if you're birding with a group of people, it is better to, if possible, to all be on the same checklist. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. And I've even had, as you guys can see, that URL at the top. I've had someone send me that URL so I can at least look at the checklist, even if I'm not added to it. But I think you still have to have an eBird profile because I was logged into my profile when I was looking at it. Yeah. But I thought that was really neat. It was something new that I just learned myself. Oh
yeah, and one thing you can also do is pull up, let's see, there's a tab for like shared checklist. Let's see. Well, oh yeah. So if you go to like all of my checklists, you can change the filter so that it shows shared checklist, unshared, checklist with media, checklist with no media, so right now I just I just changed it to where it shows only the checklists that have been shared with me. And as you can see, like here's one for Red Lobster Pond. Oh yeah, that I shared with my friend Jason. We were looking for a Western tanager the other day. And since I shared it with him, then it pops up in my shared checklist, and I can share it with someone else if I want, or, you know, there's a lot of different functionalities with it. Hopefully that, you know, if anyone has any questions on any of that in depth, I'm happy to answer.
Perfect, thank you. All right, next question is, how does eBird take into account that multiple people may report the same bird in the same location? Does that falsely elevate the bird count?
I know I mean, like, as far as output, and when I say like output, I mean like what is visible to us, because you can actually hide, you know, say if you're like an intensely private person, you can actually hide all of your checklists. There's a function, you know, like I can change something to like, I can make a checklist private. I can manage, let's see. Oh yeah, so, sorry, it's like, edit date and effort. Anyways, I would have to look on there more, but you can, oh, I know what it is. Under the checklist manage stuff, you can like, well, maybe that's not it. Anyways, you can do it. I mean, it's I don't usually hide any of my checklists, but especially for like, you know, there are good reasons to do that. Say if like you find sparrow, you know, certain types of birds that like really should not be, you know, should be minimally disturbed. You know, like for example, out at Prairie Creek, there's Henslow sparrows, but like it's really, it should avoid trying, you know, like those birds tunnel through the grass, and like it ideally like those would be disturbed minimally, but like, you know, when with those observations like that, sometimes it's better to just like not highlight the fact that these rare birds are in a certain place if they're likely, especially if they're like prone to you know, birds like Henslow sparrows that are spend a lot of time on the ground in like habitats that are easily disturbed. So anyways, you can hide that. That's, oh yeah, and the whole reason I was talking about that was because eBird, you can like submit that checklist and have it hidden, but eBird will hide it from the output. So the output is like what users can see. To answer the question, like eBird's like the actual like on their end, I think they're able to like do, you know, I think they're able to like figure out like birds that are, if it's the same bird being reported by a lot of different people, especially like in consideration of like the times and stuff. So I don't, but like to us, it definitely, it can like skew what the percentages are of like, if you look on the target species, you know, I think it helps just for when I show an example of this. If I go to target species and put in Alachua County, and show the birds from my life list, here you can see like what the frequency is, right? And this shows that there are 85 birds that have been seen in Alachua County that I have never seen. The first one, and it's automatically sorted by frequency. So this shows that the most frequently reported bird that I haven't seen is the Vermilion flycatcher. It also shows that the second most frequently reported bird is a ruff. But there's only been like, it's the same ruff being reported over and over again. That percentage is artificially like, it's that like the fact that it's more frequently reported is because a lot of people went to see that bird when it was here. This was before I was a birder. It was out at Noonan's Lake. But there certainly have not been more ruffs in Alachua County than common golden eyes or golden crowned kinglets or dick sissels. So to answer the question, to us, it'll change what the frequency is, like the frequency of observations, but for the science, it doesn't skew the science, to my knowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, I know there's a whooping crane that everybody's been trying to catch right now, and so I imagine that there's a high number of people trying to get that on their checklists, and I'm sure Ebird, the folks at Cornell, are seeing that come in and realizing that we're all out there with our own checklists.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a really great question for beginners. So what is an essential field guide? And also, what kind of binoculars should I buy? Do you have a recommendation?
Ooh, an essential field guide. You know, this is I like. I don't know if there's just one. I know the one that I check the most is Sibley's. I use a Sibley. I'll just like show y'all what my phone like. I don't know if I can. It should. There we go.
There we go.
So you can see that my three main ones are the Sibley guide, the Merlin app, and there's like Ebird Pro. I use the Sibley book. I also use Crossley's field guide to birds. The National Geographic ones are, like I've really noticed that each of them like offer different things that aren't necessarily in all three. Like the Sibley guide doesn't, the Sibley guides are like illustrations. Well, Sibley guides are illustrations, like, graphic illustrations. They're not photos. The Crossley guide shows a lot of different photos, a lot of different like angles and types. And like any guide is going to have like trade-offs of like, they're designed to be able to be field guides where you can see like, they try to show like the most likely or most common like things that you'll likely see. They don't necessarily show all the plumages, like especially for birds like gulls that are like have a lot of different plumages because it takes them 2, 3, 4 years to mature. It's for things like that, it can be difficult to really learn gulls, shorebirds, sometimes, especially peeps, those little small sandpipers. Those give me lots of trouble still. But yeah, I personally, I like Sibley's, I like Crossley's, and I use the Audubon app too. I just had to delete it off my phone because I needed to I was taking pictures and I needed to open up some storage. But the Audubon Field Guide app is great. Merlin Bird ID is great. I use a combination of smartphone apps and books.
And do you have any binocular recommendations for someone who's just getting started?
The ones that there's a very good, like National Audubon has a very good, beginner's guide to binoculars. I think that the one that was like recommended by, National Audubon Society was Nikon. Let me double check. Actually, I can pull this up and like Audubon binocular guide. Yeah, and it's good because it has like a lot of different depending on what the price ranges are. Let's see. There we go. All right, I'm going to share my screen. You can see if you type in Audubon binocular guide, it'll bring up this page. It'll show you different categories. And I like the get in the game one. Yeah, so this one recommended like just to get in, just for a beginner one. This is the best binoculars for less than 150. This one has Nikon ProStaff 3S for 120. And the Nikon's great. I've used my friend Eric Amundsen for a long time, especially let me use his an extra pair of Nikon binoculars that he had. And then another friend, because I'm pretty poor, myself, I've bought a nice pair of binoculars for myself once and they broke. So I've largely depended on the generosity of friends who let me either use their binoculars or have like given me extra binoculars that they had. So I've been fortunate to be able to like depend on that generosity because I cannot afford a really nice set of binoculars. But anyways, yeah, it's, you know, like they're a good set of binoculars doesn't have to break the bank. And that's why those, sorry, I know I'm like looking all over the place on this page. It doesn't have to like break the bank. There's all kinds of great binoculars for less than, you know, even less than that. Like Nikon has, like you can buy used binoculars from Nikon on their website, like refurbished. So you know, I like these guides.
And I've been on a couple of trips with Audubon members pre-COVID times, of course, where they'll let you borrow a pair or use theirs just to kind of try them out and figure out what you like and what works for you. So I know they're expensive. I myself am always like, wow, 150, that's a lot for a pair of binoculars if I break them. But there's ways you can try them out. And then also there are a lot of binocular companies that have pretty good warranties. So if you do break them, you can send them in and they'll send you a new pair. So I don't remember what brand it was, but there was one brand where a lot of birders were like, they're great because you can exchange them. Anything that's wrong with them, they'll send you a new pair.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like things like warranties and like being able to get stuff replaced. I do like binoculars that have that like whatever it's called, like the ED, like something like ED glass or something, like whatever you can afford that will like just, you know, minimize distortions and things like that. One thing that I do want to add is that try, you know, like you can get like what I can't remember the exact like what the numbers mean, but like the 8, I use 8x42s, like getting like the 10, like stuff like 10x42s or 12. I don't even know what the numbers go up to. I like a lot of birders like that, you know, like that 8 or 7 because it allows you to see things in lower light, which, you know, if you're going to have a set of binoculars that you use extensively, they should be, you know, something that like that are going to be useful, you know, whenever you're using them. So, and I spend a lot of time, like if you're like looking at a lot of birds just don't really come out until like low light conditions, or, you know, like the rusty blackbirds that roost at Sweetwater, like they don't come in until like 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the sun goes down. And you're already like in lower light conditions. You know, if you have like 10x42 or 12x42 or whatever, like you're going to be missing, like you're not going to be, it doesn't allow as much light into your binoculars. So you're not going to be able to see like some collar details if it's like, you know, low light conditions.
And actually, Peter from Tall Timbers is on this webinar, and Debbie Siegel from Alachua Audubon, they both sent me the same, basically the same thing, said Vortex binoculars. That's the one with the lifetime warranty. And that is the one I was thinking of. So thank you both for sending that in to us when we couldn't remember it. All right, I have one more question that's really specific about eBird, and then we've got about 10 minutes left. We've got some questions about the banding lab and then general birding, and we'll try to get to all of those before 7:30. So this last question that is about eBird is when you were discussing the options available in eBird, it kind of seems like most of those specialized options were only available on the desktop. Is that correct, or can you get that on the app as well? I know we used a desktop tonight because we're obviously on Zoom tonight. But is the app similar in some of the features that it has?
Oh yeah, it mostly is. Like I honestly, like very rarely do I use the website unless, you know, like I tend to use, I'm a very heavy smartphone user. Like sometimes I've actually used my phone much less since I become a birder. I don't use social, like I do use social media like much more, like I use it much less, but like more targeted. Because I just spend more time looking at birds. But anyways, yeah, it's like there are a lot of different options. Like, are we talking? Is the question like about like the protocols? Like, I'll try to like when there are different types of observation types, and y'all will see this once you create your eBird accounts and like try to submit a list, and it'll ask you, were you traveling? Was it stationary? I'll try to, let me see if, should be able to see this. I'll show you, like this is what it looks like on the phone. I'm not sure if that's what the question is, like what, as far as options, but like doing that, like when it comes to like species, like there's also there's also, I know this is suboptimal, but if you like on any checklist on your mobile, when you're doing it, you should be able to see that there's a search bar. So like if you saw a crow and you're not sure if it was an American crow or a fish crow, you just type in crow and it'll give you like these three options. Is it a fish crow, an American crow, or a crow species? Which if like crows aren't really like, I get people that are really good can like identify them by sight, but like I don't have that capacity. I don't know what a crow is until it makes a sound. And then a fish crow sounds like whereas a crow sounds like it's like a fish crow sounds more nasal. But anyways, if you don't know what it is, you have an option to say, oh, I saw a bird, but I saw a crow, but I didn't know what kind it was. So yeah, lots of options on the mobile. It's there are trade-offs, but mobile is great for most things. You just, like I said, you can't upload media using the app. You can upload media on your smartphone, but you have to go to ebird.org. You have to go to eBird. You have to open up your checklist, and then you can like add media from your phone if you took a picture with your phone.
And some of the things you went over, like identifying hotspots, that's in the app. You can do that, see what hotspots are near you when you're looking for birding spots. So there's different things you can do with the app, and they do kind of correlate to the website a little bit. So I think that was the question, is just kind of, I see all these things on the desktop. Is it also in the app? And I think the answer is most of them are, yes.
Yeah. Oh, and that reminds me, someone may have already put it in, but I'm posting a link for the the eBird Essentials Guide. This was by, it's by the Cornell Lab. It just teaches you about eBird, like what the essentials are. It's really great. If you're an educator, like there's an eBird for educators tool and resource. But it's, like there are so many different ways to like learn about it. But mostly, when I started eBirding, I kind of just like learned it by doing. And I learned mostly, like others have said, a great way to learn bird ID is to go out with other birders, especially, in other times when there are field trips and things like that. So hopefully we can get back to that. And I'm very excited to like, when that does become a reality again, I can't wait to like welcome all these new birders and like people who have never had an opportunity for a really cool field trip.
And our ACT's preserves are excellent birding spots. I know I see birders out there. I work at one of them. And so when I'm out there right now, we're all working kind of remotely, but I do run into birders all the time. They're excellent spots. So if you want to learn and you're looking for a really good location to learn, we've got some preserves in Alachua County that are excellent for birding. And you can even, if you go to Prairie Creek, you might even see the Banding Lab while you're out there, which leads me to my next question, which is are some questions about the Banding Lab. We've got a couple more minutes, and I did see that someone raised their hand. I know I announced this earlier, but I just want to make sure everybody knows we can't acknowledge like video or audio during a webinar for Zoom, but if you have a question, the Q&A or the chat box is where you can submit that. Let's move on to the banding lab just really quickly. Of course, if anyone has any other questions and I didn't get to yours, Tim is available. You can contact him through Audubon. You can also contact him through me if you want to get in touch with him. My contact information is on the ACT website. So let's see what kind of good questions. I'm going to pare it down to a few. How do you get involved with volunteering with the banding lab? Is there a volunteer program or is it just interns right now?
As far as I know, right now it's just interns. We haven't, unfortunately, and this is only because there are specific mandates and guidelines that UF has for students and their ability to, like that. There are like safety precautions that students are protected, and as they should be. It's out of consideration for the pandemic. We're just not at that point yet. Like right now our volunteers have been interns and Alachua Audubon board members. I know they look forward to the point where they can open it up a little bit and invite other people to come out and help, because it's really fun, it's really neat, but it's when COVID is over.
Sure. Yeah. And if you're looking to get out in nature, ACT is doing a couple of preserve cleanups where we're outside and we don't have the same, we obviously have very strict guidelines in place to keep everybody safe, but it's not necessarily the same as the university where we can't have people, working outside together. So we've got that. If you want to get out on the preserves, it's not necessarily birding, but it does give you an opportunity to see some of the birds, and maybe there's a birder out there with us who can help. And we're also going to do some paddles later this spring too, which allows us to socially distance, but also we see a lot of really cool birds on those paddles too. So that's an option for now.
Oh yeah, and I think Sweetwater Wetlands is having like some ranger guided tours, like very limited numbers. I think that might be an option.
So there are some opportunities right now since the banding lab's not taking volunteers, but hopefully they'll be able to do so once the pandemic is over, once it's starting to slow down a little bit. So this is a really interesting question. I'm curious about the answer as well. Does the band expand on the bird? Does it expand to allow growth of the bird on the leg, or is the bird fully grown when you band it at the lab?
Typically, there have been like some subadults. They don't grow that much. But like the bands that go on them are always, like they're standardized to make sure that they're big enough for them as an adult.
Great. Yeah, that was, I saw that question and I thought I would like to know the answer to that one too. Awesome. Let's see. This is actually my question. What does the banding lab do with the data that they're recording? So when they're recording those numbers and the species that they're catching, do they submit that to Ebird? Do they submit that somewhere else?
Yeah, actually, both. It goes to all this information gets submitted by I believe Dr. Sieving submits it all to like a national, like federal, clearinghouse basically. Where if someone else were to capture one of those birds in their nets, they could go in there and see, oh, like this is the information of like, this is the birds, this is what was recorded and reported by Prairie Creek Banding Lab. And we also, when I'm banding out there, I include the birds that we band on. I make an Ebird checklist when I go out there on Saturday mornings, and the birds that we capture, I put them on there. So there is a specific protocol for that, but I don't usually get super advanced on it. I always, cause I do have other observations that I include. But yeah.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you. And then last question, and then we're going to conclude for the evening. This is a couple of a general question. I'm sorry, I didn't get to everybody's tonight. I was trying to stay specific to Ebird and to the banding lab this evening. But this one, I can answer half of it as the attorney on the call. The first question was, are drones illegal in state parks? Yes, they are now illegal in state parks. And Tim, I'm going to ask you the second part of the question. If drones are being used were being used in state park, they disturb the birds, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and like, I actually saw this the other day, and like, I mentioned going out to Pinellas County. I went to like Tampa, and there was a park there, and they were flying drones, and like there were a lot of it was like right next to the bay itself, and there are it's better to avoid disturbing birds with like a lot of like chasing, things that might that might scare them, especially that are like flying around, yes, making loud noises, yes, but like it's always important to try to like not disturb birds, especially in consideration that like they're already under so many stressors. They're already like declining in so many different ways, under different pressure from development, habitat loss, predators, migration, everything. And yeah, so like don't chase birds, don't scare them for no reason, don't fly drones around birds.
Or any wildlife, to be quite honest. Yeah. So that concludes our presentation this evening. It is 7:30. Tim, I just want to thank you so much for a really insightful presentation. And thank you, Alachua Audubon Society, for partnering with us, and Tall Timbers for partnering with us on this project to help people learn more about eBird and about birding in the community. If you guys want to check this presentation out later, if you want to share it with somebody who maybe couldn't be here, you can check out ACT's YouTube page. There will be a recording up right after this. It should just go up automatically. We will also put it on ACT's website, and I'll share it with Tim so that he can distribute it to any of the groups that he's in too. So thank you guys for being here this evening. Our next webinar will be sometime in February. We have not set the date yet, but keep an eye on ACT's website for that. We hope you'll return for another webinar with us. And Tim, again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thank you, ACT. And everyone who joined us.
Yeah, you guys have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Cheers.